and welcome to the Storied Human. Each week, I will tell you a story, or I will talk to someone who has their own compelling story to tell. I'm a writer who loves to write, but even more, I love to hear stories. Did you know that humans have been telling each other stories since before they wrote? It is one of our most basic forms of communication. And we still love stories that are really old. There's just something wonderful for humans in stories. I hope to explore the treasures inside of our stories. Hopefully, we will all connect and feel close, learn together, and just maybe start to remember who we really are. So tell me, what's your story? I'd love to hear it. Today on our podcast, we have retired comedian Sue Ryerson. She's been through a lot in her life, a lot of different careers, has a lot of good advice for us. But mostly what we notice is she's got the humor thing that really kind of gets her out of a lot of things and makes her life easier. And I'd love to talk to her about that and more. So take it away, Sue.
Hi, everybody.
And welcome.
Thank you. And it's just thank you for inviting me. I like this. But we've talked about in the past that my sense of humor is probably my biggest lifesaver. It's like you said, I'm a survivor. I have very good survival instincts, but most of the time it was my humor that would pull me through some devastating situations, some just that were difficult, big changes in my life. That was the mainstay. I would go back to humor and be okay. That would get me through, just to find the funny. Like everything, people think that comedians are just funny. And I'm like, no, it's just our perspective is. We have a different way of looking at something totally normal. And I'm like, what we say like happened to us happens to you too, but the way we look at it is differently than the way you look at it. You look at it as the norm. We find that little tweak in there that makes it not normal anymore. So, and but it served its purpose. I mean, like in high school, it got me in trouble. But my vice principal, who turned out to be a very good friend from seeing him a lot, at one point he said, what are you going to do? Grow up and be a comedian? So 2 years later, when I started, I saw him out at dinner one night, and I handed him my card that said comedian. And he looked at me, he said, "You're kidding me." I said, no, when I thought about it, it seemed like a smart choice. Get paid for being funny. I'm like, what could be better? So he ended up coming out, and him and his wife came to a show with another teacher and her boyfriend. So I had my vice principal and the teacher that used to actually send me away during class. She used to send me to go to study hall so that I wouldn't disrupt things.
So they saw the end result, which was pretty darn good.
Good, yep.
So tell me more about being a comedian, like how you started. I just think people are fascinated with how somebody does that.
I had a job doing collections, which would run through my entire life. I did that off and on. But I was doing collections, and I was constantly cutting up and making everybody laugh and not do their job. So I got fired. And it was actually my best friend's brother that was my boss. And he said, I feel really weird doing this. He said, you might be doing your job, but nobody else is doing theirs. They're waiting for you to say something funny. So he fired me. And that night I went and got my friend Donna, and we went to the local bar, and we got drunk to celebrate my freedom. And we went to another like bar club type thing in town. And I slurred my way past the front door and told the people at the front door that I wanted to see the owner. And they, of course, said, why? And I said, because I'm going to do stand-up comedy. I'm a comedian. So they thought it was funny. So they brought me to the owner, and I told him the same thing. And he just looked at me and said, okay. And I went, what? I wasn't ready. I'm like, I hadn't written anything. I'm like, and he said, I have a band here on Saturday night. And he said, it gets quiet in between sets. You can go up in between sets. So I did that. And it happened to be a band with 3 of my friends in it. So I felt comfortable.
That's cool.
And they introduced me. They did a really nice job of bringing me up and, preparing the audience for like, she's new, me to go to their bar and do a performance. And it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And I did it for about 10 years.
Wow.
That time. But I worked during the day too. Because making a living as a comedian is just usually a dream. You don't. It's just fun, and that's what I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it off and on it would be a help on a job that was usually very tedious. Like doing collections is very tedious work, and it's not the nicest. So having a sense of humor about it, being able to talk about it on stage about things that I did, helped me get through that, so that I could go at night and do my thing.
So kind of balanced. That's a nice balanced life. Yeah. That makes sense. So let off some steam at night and make a living out of it.
Yeah, and it was fun because I got to travel. I went up and down the East Coast. I traveled from Vermont all the way down to Florida. It's like all the way down. I just kept going and going and just got more and more jobs.
So cool.
I performed in Chicago, San Diego. So it was really neat. I got to see a lot of country. So then I took a break. I took this very long break and I got very serious about life. I decided I needed to be serious because I had been a clown most of my life, but it didn't last. So, I got a nice job. I moved to Atlanta in 1994 because it was the hot place to move. Lots of jobs, economic growth, good place to be. I bought a house 6 months into it. Foreclosure, so I made a lot of money off of it. I fixed it, sold it, and bought myself a beautiful house, 2,000 square feet, gorgeous house. And decided as I'm moving into the new house, I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I just don't like it. So I opened up a repossession agency.
You're kidding.
Oh no. And coolest thing I ever did. You get to steal cars legally, are out at 3 a.m. when the rest of the world is sleeping, trying to get a car out of a driveway and it's parked under somebody's bedroom window. How do you do that? So I had a guy that worked for me, a driver. I had 2 drivers and me. And part of the job was something that I became very skilled at, finding people. If you can't find them, you can't get their car. So you had to find them first. So that turned out to be my biggest selling point. You'll never lose a car. Wow. I will always find your car. I would have to prove that. So each new client, I would go in, and the way I would get them to at least start business with me, I'd say, give me 10 people nobody's been able to find, and I'll find them in 30 days. Then I had to. I put the pressure on myself. Okay, you got to do this to get this. Like I had Wells Fargo, I had Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I had huge clients.
Wow.
This little peanut. They didn't know how small my company was. I'm like, it's just me and 2 guys. But we were very good. We were very efficient. So we seemed bigger. We could do the job of an agency that had 5 trucks with 2 and 2 people out there, and that was it. And on occasion, I would go with them, but I would get so silly at 3 o'clock in the morning. I would get punchy because I'd been up all day doing business and I didn't sleep. And we would get so sick, we wouldn't repo. We wouldn't go get cars. We would just crack each other up and we would do nothing. So
this is a theme.
Yep. So, and like my drivers, if something went wrong at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got woken up. They have to come to me. There's no choice. So I had a lot of interrupted nights, but again, I needed a sense of humor about it. I'd be like, okay, so the engine fell out of the truck. Okay. Let me think about this and I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And I would think of what you had. You had to think of something.
Yeah.
You had to figure it. I would call another repossessor that I was friends with and say, can you go get my truck? Because the motor just fell out and I don't know what to do. So you just get resourceful. But my drivers were just like, they said, you never get rattled, and I do. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
And I said, I make fun of it. It doesn't hurt as much.
That's a great quality, I think, to not show that you're rattled. Yeah.
Well, because you have to keep your cool. You're in business for yourself. You have to stay very calm. You can't let things, and there's nobody to go like, I don't want to deal with this, so you deal with this. So
right.
You have to. So you have to have some kind of method. to just say, okay, I have to stay calm, but oh my God, this is going to cost me $5,000. So I got don't, don't. I had my driver's brother used to help us transport vehicles. Sometimes we had keys and we could drive them to an auction or drive them back to the creditor. He decided to take one for a spin on the weekend just for the hell of it. And he got pulled over and he didn't have the registration. He didn't have any information going back to him. So they impounded him. It was due back at my client's place of business Monday morning. This was Saturday.
Oh my gosh.
So I just stood, I'm steaming. I'm like beyond mad. I'm like, I can't believe this guy did this. What an idiot. So now my driver is talking to me. He's like, don't kill him. And I'm like, I'm not going to kill him. But we have to get that vehicle out of hock now. It's got to be at their office at 9 a.m. So I'm like, I said, just tell him your brother-in-law this. He's got until Monday morning at 9 a.m. And if he doesn't do it, I will kill him. My driver just went, okay. And I said, and I'm not joking.
Whoa.
I said, he did a really stupid thing. I said, I trusted him and he betrayed my trust. I said, that's why I'm upset. I said, the vehicle, we'll get it out and we'll be okay. And I said, but he cannot work for me anymore.
I don't blame you. That was a little crazy.
So I kept my cool, but I was just like, okay, I can't risk you anymore.
Yeah.
But I would see him from time to time and I'd be like, you don't have any keys on you that you shouldn't have, right?
Oh my gosh.
So, I let it drop. And I'm like, he made a really bad mistake, but it could have been very costly. I'm like, so I can't, you're a risk to me.
Definitely.
Owning a business, there's calculated risks and there's risks that you can avoid.
There's the tough decisions when it comes down to you, right? The buck stops with you.
Yeah.
So how long did you have this business?
I had it for about 5 years.
Wow.
But it's grueling. It's all day and all night. You just don't get a rest. And I was in my 40s, I guess. Yeah, I was in my 40s. I was getting I'm like, I can't stay up 24 hours like I used to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would be up for like 36 hours.
Oh.
And it was good for nothing. I'd be like talking to a client slurring and I'm like, I'm not drunk, I'm just tired. And it just, I had a horrible thing happen that was just weird. I bought a truck. My truck got stolen. My repo truck got stolen. When I found it a day later, I located it myself.
Of course you did.
Yeah, because I was like, it's my truck. I have to find it. But by the time I found it, it had been stripped down to nothing. Just the seat. It was a bench seat. That's all that was left. You could look through the front grille and look right out the back of the truck. There was nothing in there. It was a type of truck that was famous for its transmission. It was the best transmission built. So you could tow anything. It could tow a house. It was so strong.
Yeah.
That's why it got stolen.
That's why they wanted it. Yeah.
So I just stood there when I looked at the truck and I'm like, what am I going to do? If I don't have this, I don't have a business. So 2 days later, I had bought another truck, used, but still in good shape. Turns out the guy was a scam artist. He had like a little car lot with these trucks on it, specialties, a specialty truck. There was no registration and it was somebody else's truck. Because I'm calling and I'm going, how come I don't have my paperwork back from So I traced the VIN number and found out that it belonged to somebody else.
Oh my gosh.
I called the dealer and I said, I know what you did. I want my money back. $20,000 that I put down on the truck. Because they're like 70 to start with. And he cursed me out and he said, give me my truck. I said, you don't get your truck until I get my money. He had friends that sat outside my house. We hid the truck, me and my driver. I told my driver, I said, take my truck. Don't bring it back to the office. And every night when you're done, every morning when you're done, put it somewhere else at another friend's house and don't tell me where it is.
Yeah.
So,
good.
So he was like, okay, this dealership hired people to sit outside my house, outside my office.
Oh my gosh.
It was unbelievable. I was just like, I can't believe this is over a damn truck. But me being stubborn, I was like, you're not getting it. I want my money back.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a truck. They ended up, they tried to get a warrant issued for me for theft. I had all my paperwork, like the deal was there. But I had to go before the judge, and 3 people in a row before me, because it's like 20 people going up before the judge in one afternoon. So 3 people before me went to jail, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like,
oh my God.
I don't want Big Bertha to be my roommate. I really don't. I'm like, no. So I'm shaking. Literally, I can't control my nerves. My driver's with me, and a friend's with me, and I go before the judge, and she just smiled at me. She said, calm down, honey. Tell me what happened. So now the dealer, the car dealer is on the other side, and he's just railing, just going like, and the judge is going, sir, we're not talking to you yet.
Ooh.
So I'm this 5'3", 125-pound little thing. And he's this big, gangly, ugly-looking, crappy, shitty guy. So she's just looking at the two of us, just going like, I don't think so. Like, And I had my paperwork, and I had my driver to attest to what happened. And she looked at the guy from the dealership, and she said, "Don't let me ever see you in here again."
Ooh.
And I go outside, so I'm like, I almost like faint.
Oh, of course.
I'm not going to jail. I walk outside the courtroom, and I had no spit left in my mouth because I had been so nervous. I'm bending over at the water fountain, and a very Italian-looking man walks behind me and says, "It ain't over." And I just stopped, and I went, "Oh, no.
And you didn't, and this is what kills me about these people. You never did a thing wrong.
No.
Oh, they're
in the right.
They're evil.
Now we still had the truck. We didn't give it back. A week later, I think it was like a week later, I'm on my way down to visit a client. I used to go once a week to a client and go have lunch with everybody or bring the lunch to the whole office. It was just good PR.
Yeah.
And plus I enjoyed it. It got me out of the office for a little while and had fun. I was friendly with everybody. I'm driving quite a distance, like this client was an hour and a half away from my office. And as I'm flying as usual, I'm late. So I'm flying like a bat into hell. My phone rings, and it's my driver. He had been going to a potential new client to show the truck. And because a lot of the times they wanted to see if you really had a good truck, like a repo truck that wasn't going to damage their cars. It was a setup. He got there. They put and as he was stopping, a guy jumped out of a car, put a gun to his head, and said, "Get out of the truck."
No way.
So he did, because I had told him, I'm like, never argue with somebody with a gun. Just leave. Do whatever they want, and
exactly.
let them take whatever they want. I'm like, it's not worth your life. He was married. He had 4 kids. I'm like, you have to stay alive. But he called me. He just said, "I need a ride." And I said, "What do you mean you need a ride?" And I didn't know what he's talking about. "What do you mean you need a ride?" He said, "Sue, they got the truck." And I'm like, no.
My God.
No. So you're frozen, by the way.
Yeah, you are too.
Okay. Well, we can still hear each other.
At least we can hear each other.
Yeah. So I was devastated because I lost 20 grand. I had no way to buy another truck. I ended up going into Huck to get another one, and it just didn't work. I had lost clients because they were like,
I can't believe it. I can't believe the judge didn't make him give you your money back.
It really couldn't. It was a warrant hearing. It wasn't a civil suit. Like we weren't going there for a civil suit. I did sue them. I did sue the dealership. Good. But when they knew they were in trouble, like this was a bad one. Because I found 3 other people they had done this to.
Good.
So they were all gonna testify. And I said, whatever I get, I'll give you something. I'll give you what you lost. Just come and testify. It took 6 years before it came to court.
Oh my God.
They had gone out of business and hid any assets they had. So I won a little over $500,000, but I'll never see it.
That's ridiculous.
So I had to kind of like reinvent myself. It's like, okay.
My God.
So I went back to work, but shortly thereafter is when I got back into comedy because I was like, you know what's missing? I don't have a creative outlet. I don't have a way of letting off steam. I just had something horrible happen to me. I need to do what's best, and that's the best way to handle it.
So good for your head. Yeah, that was so smart. So you got back in. Was that hard?
Initially, yeah. I was a lot older. I was like 20 years older than when I left it. A lot had changed. I was used to doing auditions in person. And they didn't do that anymore. You sent a tape.
Oh, it did change a lot. Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not right. I said, you can alter a tape.
Yeah.
And I found out that that's what a lot of comics were doing. They were putting applause in. And I'd be listening and going, you suck. How did you? Don't laughing, you know. But I found it very cold, very impersonal. You know, like you got to know agents because you were in front of them. You know, and they got to see your demeanor, how you carried yourself on stage, and you know, to see if you were seasoned or not.
And there's an energy thing too. Like you just don't feel that energy thing on a tape.
And you know, I was like, a lot of them, like people would do. You know, do it in front of friends. And I was like, but you can hear the difference. You have no life to you when you're doing it. You're just repeating words to make a tape. You know, so and making them in a club, you were taking a chance. You might have to tape 10 shows to get one that was good.
Right.
But it was a whole
that's annoying.
World. It was a whole different world. And I was in a place that I was in Atlanta. Didn't really know anybody on the scene down there. So I had to start from scratch.
Wow.
And my material was very dated. The world had changed in 20 years, so I had to rewrite everything and start talking about things that a 45-year-old did or a 46-year-old did, not a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
My life was completely different. My attitude, my perspective, everything was different. In between all this, in my late 20s, I had got diagnosed as bipolar. So that comes into play. I dealt with all these stresses with an additional stress of, I'm not supposed to be able to handle this stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I got told. Well, you know, you're going to have to take a backseat to life. I was like, I don't think so.
I don't think that's you. No.
No, I've never done that. And I couldn't see why I should. So I did everything with what they said was the worst mental illness you could have. I saw it as an advantage. I was like, it makes you smarter. Like bipolars have elevated IQs. That's a fact. Like and I'm like, it's compensation. You're crazy, but you're really smart. So decide what you want to use. I was like, I'm going to use my smarts, my ability to laugh at things, and I have a very odd perspective because of my illness. I don't look at things the way anybody else does. That I know.
And I think that intersects with creativity. I really do.
Mm-hmm. And so I just started to see it as a plus and not a minus. I was
That's
like, well,
so cool. Yeah.
And I was like, it was difficult, you know, to come to grips with something like that. Like I was never going to get rid of it. And it was going to cause, you know, and like I knew it would cause me problems from time to time. If I went into an episode, I'm probably going to lose my job. I might lose a friend. And, you know, there was a lot of risk involved in just living with that. So it takes a lot of self-examination and being tough, having a tough shell and saying like, it's not going to be fun sometimes, but you just got to keep going and finding a way to compensate for that. Like how tough it's going to get and how you're going to be ostracized. I had people just turn and walk away when I told them. They were just like, you know, oh, I've heard about that. Boom, gone.
Can't deal with it. Some people just can't deal with stuff.
No. And I used to say, must hit too close to home.
Oh, yeah. In a lot of ways.
Yeah. And like there was somebody in their family or it was them or there was usually extenuating circumstances. And once I found out, I understood. But I also started to think, that's just how it's going to be. Not everybody is going to understand. Not everybody is going to be accepting. That's part of your life too. Be smart about who you talk to about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm very impressed that you realized that so easily, and you're very clear about it.
It wasn't really that easy. I had to make a lot of mistakes first and
figure it out.
And trust people and find out that, you know, the stigma was so strong that it was an uphill battle. You know, I mean, I got diagnosed so long ago that you just didn't talk about it. It was called manic depression. It wasn't even called bipolar at that point.
Right. It's changed a lot in 20 years.
And I got to a point where I was like, because you had to hide it.
Yeah. And that means that builds shame. We talk a lot with other people. I talk about shame and what that does to us. And it's not something you should be ashamed of. But if you have to hide something, you end up feeling shame.
And it's just uncomfortable. You know, it's just
you can't be yourself.
You know, because I'm, you know, like because of the illness, I'm prone to outbursts. If I get excited about something, good or bad, you just see me like I don't have a lot of control over it, and then I have to go, okay, slow down, take another look. That took time to learn.
Yeah.
But when it could happen on a job.
See, that's scary.
And of course, I mean, I didn't tell them, like, you're hiring somebody that's bipolar and I'm prone to outbursts. But other than that, I'm a really good worker. You can't do that. You know? So
really hard, right?
It's very difficult, and a lot of times just socially, you know, socially at one point or another, something's going to happen, or something you say will tip somebody off that there's something else going on. I had to be more choosy about who I socialized with. They had to be at a certain level so that I could actually say to them, look, if I all of a sudden change moods, or if I do this or if I do that, this is why. And don't worry, I go back to normal pretty quickly, you know, and I'll get past it. But you just have to allow me certain things. And I'm like, not excusing my behavior, but I'm giving you a reason for it, so that you're not confused about how I changed from who you met. Like, I really didn't change. It's a temporary change. I'm going back to. So it's just, as I got older, I got better and better at choosing people.
Yeah, it's like a filter, right? You can't do lightweight people.
No. And I mean, I did meet people that, even when I got older, that were just so stupid about it.
Yeah.
I would spend, you know, I would take a lot of time with them explaining, because they would ask questions. And I'm like, you ask questions, I'll answer them, because then you have knowledge. If you meet somebody else, you'll have this background. I had somebody, after I had talked to them for like the better part of 5 years, intermittently talking about this, said to me, it was after one of the mass shootings, well, aren't people that bipolar do that? I just went, what?
Ouch.
And I said, no, there's just evil people in the world. And they do things like that. And I said, it's not always a mentally ill person. Some people are just evil.
Well, they said it usually isn't. Like that whole idea that mentally ill people are violent and do these things, that's not true.
No, and in particular, bipolar people are much more prone to hurting themselves. We have the highest suicide rate of any illness.
Yeah, that makes me really sad.
Yeah, so I'm 60, so I'm really proud. I'm like, I didn't do it. I got
you made it. You made it.
And you know, at this point, I'm just too lazy to do it. So it takes too much effort. So some people disappointed me along the way, where I really thought they were getting it, and then I found out that they didn't. They would fall back to media being, you know, saying things that were wrong, you know, and I'd say, but I would just say to them, you know somebody firsthand, so why would you say something like that?
Like, like, where's your head?
Yeah. And I'm like, have you ever seen me do anything violent? No.
Yeah,
like,
that hurts though. To hear somebody say that.
And I had another friend that was a comedian friend, and she was dating a very good photographer. And I wanted him to do my headshots, but he was just too much money. But he decides that via my friend, he says, I'd like to do a shoot with you concerning bipolar. I was like, oh, cool. Like, yeah. And I had just gotten done with the documentary, so it was kind of dovetailing. I was like, this would be cool. But this was his idea. He says, I want to do an overlay of like a Photoshop of like another person coming out of your head. And I went, there's nobody else in here.
You have the wrong, you're thinking of DID, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, you're talking Sybil. And I'm like, and I was like, and he was too young. He didn't know what I meant. So I'm like, what? Look it up on Netflix. It's there. But I just said, we don't have split personalities.
Yeah.
We have one personality like everybody else. And I said, and that's not our whole being.
Right.
We're not a disease. We're a person with a condition.
You have bipolar. You're not bipolar. Right. It's really important to remember that. Now tell me about that documentary. And you did a couple, right?
Yeah, I did a couple. One was, I think that's so cool. I just wanted to do.
Yeah.
All right. I just find mental illness in general and bipolar especially very interesting. It's because it's such an aberration from the, and I'm like, but like to understand it and to see it and to experience it even secondhand. And I'm like, it's just a really interesting thing, and it will help you to understand people in general.
Yeah. You're fascinated with the brain. I know I am.
Yeah. Because
how the brain works.
What a wonderful, resilient piece of your body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, everything depends on your head. So when something goes wrong with your head, you better find a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because the rest of you depends on that. So I went to this group called NAMI. It's the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. Huge group. They're all over the United States and Europe. And just starting sitting in on a couple of their group things. And I was like, I think it would be better if, like, we did the talking. Us. I'm like, because, like, these are people that don't have it. So how can you tell me what I'm supposed to do? You don't do it. But I became friendly with a couple of people at this place. And I walked in one day and I said, I need 4 crazy people. So I said, you have access to them. So can you get me some people like me? So the director said, I have to get in touch with them and get the okay from them, and they'll contact you. So I got 3 girls. It took a while for them to come forward, and they were 3 Black girls. And in that culture, they don't believe in mental illness. They're starting to, but it was very difficult for them. They just don't believe in it. Just pray and it'll go away.
Yeah, that's tough.
So I was like, well, how cool is this? That I got these people that aren't supposed to be talking about it going on film and talking about it.
It's excellent.
And we had an absolute blast. We had to keep cutting away because we would get too stupid and goofy because we were finding out the similarities. Oh, you did that too? Oh my God, I did that. And it was just like us. We were like, we found a group just like us. Like we found each other. And we were like, we don't have to pretend. We can just be us. So it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a budget of like $1,000. So it was not the best documentary, but we used it for going to mental health groups. And we would show the video. We got invited to conventions and all kinds of, they were going to have a mental health day at a couple of universities. We went there and we would show the video and then have a question and answer period. And I think I was telling you earlier that the video was like, I think 32 minutes long, and the question and answer was 2.5 to 3 hours.
Wow.
People had questions.
Oh my gosh.
And it was their opportunity to ask people that actually had the illness. And we were very upfront. We were, sometimes one of us wouldn't feel good, would be having a day. And I'd be like, so that's what it's like. So
cool.
Mona is having a day today. And I'm like, this is what's going on with her. Like, Mona, go ahead and tell them. And she would tell them what that day was like. So it got to be very interesting, very educational. And we would have people, the nicest part, because I said the whole idea is to get people to recognize that they need help or that they can help somebody.
Yeah.
This isn't the end of the world. That there's still life beyond diagnosis.
That was so clever of you to start with that. I mean, it just amazes me that you were at this famous institute and you had to say, hey, we should probably talk about ourselves, the ones who actually go through it.
Yeah, because I was like, I went to doctors. I only went to one therapist, and she kept insisting that my parents must have beat me when I was small.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Had drug problems, and I was like, that couldn't be the furthest thing from my life.
I know. You had a great childhood.
I had this idyllic childhood, and I'm like,
and you were the baby.
Yeah.
Even like, better, right?
Yeah, I got away with murder, because I was the blonde-haired little kid. And I was like, if this is your idea of helping me,
yeah, that's terrible.
Convince me. And I said, this is a genetic predisposition. I had an aunt that had it, and I said it was in the background. I'm like, I had no choice. This is just what happened. It's not from an environment. It's in my head. So I never went back, and I just did my own form of. I just studied more and more about it, and decided that rather than hiding everything and not getting the information out there that we're not really that different, and it's a small percentage of your life, the larger percentage of your personality and your intelligence are the same.
Yeah.
Or better.
I think it's great. You get that news out. It really helps demystify it. So what is your advice for people that don't have bipolar? Like what do you wish they knew when dealing with people who have bipolar?
I wish they wouldn't separate it from any other illness.
Tell me what you mean by that. Yeah.
Don't make the distinction of physical, that it's not a physical illness. It's the same thing. An illness
I love that.
An illness is an illness. If I had MS, you would immediately be sympathetic and say, well, what are you doing for it? And how do you do? That's not the case all the time when you say, I have a mental illness. Oh, you get that ice cold. Oh. People get uncomfortable when you talk about it. And I tell them, I go, well, if I had diabetes and I started talking about my insulin, would that bother you? Well, no. And I'm like, so why does this?
That's such a good point. We have to get to that point, right? And people have to realize it's an illness.
Yeah. And you treat it. That's one of those things that you don't get rid of. And there's a whole lot of things like that.
Yeah.
Conditions that you just learn to live with. I got asked an unusual question I had. And it was a nice guy. It's a friend of mine. He said, is it painful? And I just sat there and I went, well, I said to him, it depends on what you classify pain as. And I said, if you mean like a boo-boo, no. I said, I don't have, like a pain in my knee, or I said, it's not that kind of pain. I said, there is anguish when you feel your worst, desperation, and a loneliness because you feel like you're the only person in the world that feels this way. Oh. And I said, that's painful.
Yeah.
So I said, so is there pain? Yes, but not what you're talking about, not what you think of as pain. And I said, but if I had a physical disability, it would be easier to understand pain.
Yeah.
Because it's the pain that you're used to, what you think of as pain.
Sue, I can't thank you enough for sharing what you did with us. I think we all learned more about how to show sensitivity about mental illness, but also how to laugh more, which I really appreciate. So thank you so much. Please come back and join us next week on The Storied Human. And be sure to read the show notes for this episode. I've included links to Sue's documentaries. And if you're interested, there's a link to NAMI, the National Association for the Mentally Ill. So there's some good information there. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you next time, Monday, every Monday, new episode on The Storied Human. Take care. And now, enjoy a few more bars of my new intro and outro song written by my son, Brendan Talian. I love that Brazilian feel, and I really like having his original music on my show. So enjoy.